want to go out and like really do something.
I say it, I say it again. You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. Bamboozled.
It's a celebration, fellas. Salute.
Always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone. The way of the future. The way of the future. The way of the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Duel of the Greats, Season 2, Episode 9, folks. We're Music Week here this week. We have got a treat for you here. Martin Scorsese and New York, New York, starring Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli, will be going up against Spike Lee's Betta Blues, starring Denzel Washington, Wesley Snipes. A lot of both movies kind of have a lot of the same players that we've come to know from these directors, which is something that we a theme we've noticed throughout the season. Anyway, let's dive right in. First thing, you guys, before I have something really important that we need to figure out before we get to talking about which movie we thought was better for the Music Week. I need to know who is the better faux saxophone player. Faux saxophone player? I don't know. Faux saxophone player. Wesley Snipes or Robert De Niro? Hit me with it. Nate?
This is easy. Okay, Nate, go first.
I do not play a musical instrument, so I'm probably not a good judge of that. I feel like De Niro's performance with his saxophone is way over the top of what a saxophone player probably does, whereas Wesley Snipes is a little more understated and probably is a little bit more realistic to how an actual player would conduct themselves. I do not know. I do not. This is a great question. I'll ask my band director tomorrow at school, who plays the saxophone. That's his main instrument, and I'll ask if he's seen either of these movies, and then I can direct him to the podcast, and then that just gets us more listeners. You see, everybody wins.
Boom.
It's synergy, baby. Like a good jazz quartet. My wife.
That's what we're
Major
like.
chord, if you will.
There you go. My wife is a musician, a lapsed musician, I guess. She played a lot when she was younger. Doesn't play much anymore, but she still has the talent and the skills and the eye and the ear.
We can see her cello behind you.
Yeah, it's sitting
Down
behind
the
me.
video there.
It needs to be restrung, and I need to get her a new bow. But it's here. And she saw parts of these movies with me, and she had thoughts. So many, actually, that I thought about bringing her on as a special guest. Because as with Nate, I'm not a musician. Jeff, I think you have the most musical ability out of the group here. So I'm curious your answer to this too. But she had big thoughts on this, and she very, very much... I wouldn't say she preferred any of them, but she said that Robert De Niro was a disaster. It was not believable in any way, shape, or form. Trying to see if I wrote down any of these quotes here. It was at one point she said it was a bold choice directorially to show his body, face, and his hands all at the same time while he is supposedly playing. I'm doing air quotes, by the way. So she was not pleased with his performance when he was trying to show that he was doing the saxophone. She also said one of the most irritating things to see as a musician is an actor not actually playing. She said that. So she did not like De Niro. She did think that Wesley Snipes was better, and Denzel Washington she thought looked okay on trumpet. Looked like they actually... She said it didn't look like they were necessarily playing the songs, but she said it looked like they at least knew what they were doing somewhat. Interestingly, she thought that it looked like Bill Nunn, the bassist, had some sort of experience in Betta Blues. And I think she commented on the drummer in Betta Blues, which interestingly enough, he is a real musician. He was the only one that wasn't an actor in the jazz. I guess they're a quintet. There's five of them.
They were initially a quintet. We'll get into that later.
Yeah. Anyway,
there you
go.
I'm with both of you.
Yeah,
I think
De
Wesley
Niro
Snipes is the winner.
sucks.
I figured that would be the case, but I
He's a
wanted to
no
get that out
talent
of the way.
hack. That's the hot take here. De Niro is at least
De
when it
Niro
comes
sucks.
at least when it comes to fake saxophone playing.
So, all right, who do we want to start off with this, or which movie we want to start off with this week?
I feel like last week there was more to unpack with Bamboozled, so that went second. This week I feel like there's more to unpack with New York, New York. So I'd say we switch it up when we go Mo Betta Blues first.
All right, go for it.
And what I will say, so I saw both of these movies. I have a very interesting experience with watching these movies. So I saw both of these movies at the same time when I was 20 years old in a really great class called Jazz in Cinema at the
That had
University
to
of
be confusing.
Kansas. It,
See,
it was it was
watching
it
two
was a
movies at
very
once.
it was we watched. I think it was like it might have been. I can't remember that long ago, but it was like I think we watched them, one after the other each week. Um, it was taught by the late great Chuck Berg, a professor at KU. He was a really cool guy. So I saw them both when I was 20. Didn't watch them again, and then I watched them both again for the first time this week. And I think probably similar things about both of them. Um, Mo Better Blues for me is kind of like I think that it's an interesting movie, and I appreciate a little bit of what Spike Lee is trying to do. I want to be consistent in how I've criticized these filmmakers. I was very critical of Martin Scorsese a few weeks ago with in regard to Casino because I felt that he was being a little bit derivative. I feel like this is a movie at this point in Spike Lee's career that felt a little bit derivative to me, not as much as Casino was for Scorsese. Obviously, he has a whole music component, and there's a little bit of difference to that. There's just something stylistically about it that doesn't really separate itself from other Spike Lee movies, and it's an okay movie that I think is punctuated by a few really good moments. The moment when he comes into the club and she sings Harlem Blues at him is that was the scene. That was the one scene from when I was 20 years old that I remembered, and I always remembered that exact moment. And I thought that was a really, really well structured scene and kind of a beautiful scene. Then the rest of it just kind of it comes off as a little bit forgettable to me, and I still kind of think that after so many years, it's just one of those. It's an okay movie that has a few good moments in it. It's fun to see a lot of young. It's got young Denzel. You've got young Wesley Snipes. You've got young Samuel L. Jackson. You've got a lot of these really cool young people in it. I feel like Spike Lee is getting a little bit to a point where he overuses himself as an actor. I think a feeling that I had at the time. I will also say, and I want to get you guys' opinion on this. I've said to both these guys beforehand that I've never been more curious to hear their opinions because I'm a little bit lost on both these movies and what I think and where I would and how I would assess them. I feel like this has to be addressed. There are these club owners played by the Turturro brothers, and the movie was criticized at the time for perpetuating what I would agree are some pretty blatant Jewish stereotypes in their mannerisms and how they act. Spike Lee has never apologized for that and has kind of said, you know, and I think this point is well served. He said people have been putting, racial and ethnic stereotypes in movies for decades. It's interesting that when I, a black filmmaker, am accused of doing it, I'm immediately called out on it. Whereas other Hollywood directors and filmmakers have been doing it for decades and decades and decades. That to me is kind of a two wrongs don't make a right. Watching it now, and I probably wasn't as educated as I should have been on those kinds of stereotypes when I was 20 years old, and it was not mentioned in the class that I was in. Now that I see it as more of a middle-aged guy, it was a little bit more bothersome to me, and it was particularly bothersome to me because we've seen these movies this season and throughout Spike Lee's career where his whole thing is breaking down stereotypes and putting racial and ethnic depicting racial and ethnic minorities in the United States in these really different and cool and vibrant ways. And I feel like he kind of does a disservice to himself and his overall message with the characterization of those two people. Maybe I'm thinking a little too much into this. Steve, what did you think of the movie?
I so the opening credits of this I thought were one of the most beautiful things we've seen in this entire season. Jeff's smiling. I can't
You,
tell if he's gonna disagree with me or
I won't necessarily disagree. I feel like it's like the third week in a row you said that. Now, granted, you haven't seen any of the movies, so it could very well be possible that you think each one is better. I just think it's funny. You really like the opening credits in the movies this year.
they keep wowing me with these things. The use of color and sound, all the way that they came together, it wowed me. So that started the film off on a good foot for me. My overall take on this movie is it's helping me. It helped me. I think I'm starting to really get a sense of at least my personal theory of Spike Lee as a filmmaker, and I think Jeff, your favorite critic, I think one of his complaint isn't the right word. One of his critiques of Spike Lee, Roger Ebert said, I think a lot of times that Spike Lee would be a little bit too. I can't remember some of the words he used in one of his reviews, several of his reviews for movies, but basically he suffers from scope creep. I think if anyone is familiar with that term from work or anything like that, but he tries to cram, I think, too many things into some of these movies. There are just a few too many ideas, a few too many plots, a few too many characters, a few too many themes. And
Eyes are bigger than his stomach might be
yeah,
a good way to say it in terms
and
of eating food.
and exactly, and I get it. He's got a lot to say, and he's got a lot of good things to say. So I understand the urge to do it, but I think at some point he weighs himself, he weighs his movies down with this, and I think when he's at his best, he keeps it nice and tight with kind of just an A, B, and a C plot. Like Do the Right Thing. It's only got kind of two or three main plot lines and kind of character. There's obviously multiple characters and arcs, but the way that they all interact and kind of the main thrusts of the movie all kind of line up and sync up in similar ways. Here, there's at one point I sat down and I counted it. There's I think like 6 or 7 different things going on here. You got conflicts essentially. Threads is how I listed it. You have Giants gambling and the trouble that's leading. You have the Indigo Clark Bleak love triangle, the Bleak Clark Shadow love triangle, the Bleak and Shadow rivalry within the band, the struggle for the band just to get money and get off the ground, which is a little bit different than what do they do with Giant as their manager? Do they keep him? Do they go with something else? Do they? Then you have them fighting with the club owners, which you mentioned. Then there's the intra-band struggles with Giancarlo Esposito's character showing up late all the time, and it's just there's so many things flying around, and it feels like there's not enough time given, I think, for any of them to truly take the lead as the main narrative thrust of the film to really take hold and carry the movie through. At least in my mind, and we kind of get distracted and wander off in certain points, and it just gets bogged down. Like for instance, I think if the movie had been focused on Bleak, the Denzel Washington character, and Shadow, Wesley Snipes, their battle, for who's the number one, the top dog in this quartet or quintet. If we had really put that front and center, they dance around it, and there's a couple really good scenes between the two of them. But if we had made that the main thrust of the movie, the main driving force of the plot, and then with kind of the side being one of the love triangles, not two, and then cut out some of the gambling, cut out some of the other things. You know, you hear about other movies, and especially like adaptations, where like some of the real magic in this is figuring out what to keep, right? What to cut out and what to keep. And I think sometimes Spike suffers from that because he's the writer, director, and producer. You know what I mean? It's almost like he got so much success that he didn't have anybody saying, "Why don't we trim this down just a little bit?" But the cast is amazing. The performances, for the most part, I think are pretty good. There's some really good dialogue in here, even though there's some other kind of stilted parts. But I want to save kind of my final thoughts on it, I think, until we talk about the other movie. But it was I enjoyed it, but I think it suffered from some of the other from some similar issues that other Spike Lee, I don't want to call them misses, but you know, it didn't hit the heights of some of the best Spike Lee movies for similar reasons, I think.
One thing I'll just interject with real quick is we have, I think this is something that what you're describing, Steve, is something that plagued him early in his career. And we haven't watched a lot of recent Spike Lee stuff.
That's true. That's very,
We
very
watched,
true.
and Red Hook Summer is the most recent thing of his that we've watched, but that is almost kind of an outlier because they made that very cheaply. That was almost kind of like an experimental film.
Yeah.
Really, of like his major Hollywood studio movies, the most recent ones we've watched are like 25th Hour and Summer of Sam, and those are like, 25 years old now. So I'll be curious to see kind of what you think when you see something like Inside Man or Black
Mhm.
Klansman, because I feel like he's gotten better
Yeah.
at
Well,
tightening those narratives.
and I mean, I've seen Black Klansman, and I haven't rewatched it for this season, but that I can tell you that's not one of my concerns with that film, just based off my memory of watching it when it came out in theaters. So I
Yeah,
think
I
the
just feel like we've
addition of
watched a lot. Yeah, a lot of his
yeah,
like earlier and '90s stuff is kind of what we've been, and so we'll
and
see if
it
he
is
gets a
worth
little better with that.
well, it's worth mentioning. Yeah, this is his first movie after Do the Right Thing. So you know, he had the crazy initial success, and then Do the Right Thing is his his huge success right at the beginning of his career. And so he's almost kind of given a not a blank check like you would want, I assume, but he could kind of do whatever he wanted to a certain extent. And there was just a lot of desire to kind of go out and again, he wrote it, he directed it. He's not sharing co-writing credits with anybody, so this is all him. Unlike some of those later films like you're talking about, Black Klansman shares with Kevin Wilmot. Um, the Five Bloods. That's his most recent release, correct? 2020, I think, and it's gotten, I think, pretty
That's
good
sad.
praise in terms of writing and pacing. I've not seen it. I want it. It's on my list, but I think that also he co-wrote with Kevin Wilmot. So yeah, I think this is something that he's I don't want to say worked on. Like let me tell Spike Lee how to fix this, but you know what I mean. Um,
But we're also not the only ones to have these complaints. I mean, the
sure, sure.
critics, have been saying it.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely agree a lot with what both you said. And just to borrow what Steve you said a couple weeks ago with the Cape Fear Red Hook Summer thing, where the opposite of love is not hate but indifference. Um, uh, without spoiling which I choose, I'm indifferent to both these movies this week. There's just nothing really memorable about either one. And with Betta Blues, it just felt like, man, a lot of because of because or for a lot of the reasons that you stated, Steve, it felt like just kind of missed opportunities here. I mean, and to also piggyback on what you were saying, Nate, with the Turturro brothers and the way they were depicted, I even wrote that down. I was like, what are they doing? Like, what is this, like some sort of weird brotherly routine or something that I'm not getting? And it felt it was such a minor part of their characters, which had such little screen time, that I don't think it was such a huge uh, issue, but it just at least I won't say that, but it's just that it wasn't a huge impact on the movie. But I completely agree with the idea that he's doing himself a disservice. Like you can't base your sort of filmmaking identity on on, or at least a lot of your filmmaking identity on uncovering these social issues and these racial issues, and like you said, tearing them down so that we can kind of see that there's more to it than just these that we've been when presented with. I mean, that was a big thing of Bamboozled, right? Like there's more to characters than what we've been presented with so many years with different stereotypes. And to then unapologetically put that into a movie and sort of just say, people do it, and it just because I'm and then all of a sudden he's being attacked just because like, oh well, how come everybody else gets to do it and I don't? And it just, yeah, I don't agree with that from Spike Lee himself. Seemed like you wanted to say something, Nate.
I just, yeah, I'm gonna read a quote, and I don't want to harp on this. He says, I stand behind all my work, including my characters, Mo and Josh Flatbush, who are played by the Turturro brothers. Critics are telling me that to avoid charges of anti Semitism, all Jewish characters I write have to be model citizens, and not one can be a villain, cheat, or a crook, and that no Jewish people have ever exploited black artists in the history of the entertainment industry. That's unrealistic and unfair. And that would be fine if that's what this is, but this isn't a villainous character who is kind of a cheat and sort of exploits these artists and happens to be Jewish. This is like a blatant Jewish stereotype,
Yeah,
and
like
I want to like it's the and I'm not I want to be I don't even know how I want to like phrase this in a way like
John
it
Turturro and his brother, like they have their hair done in a specific way that they don't that you don't normally see for them in other movies. They changed their voices to sound a particular way. Like there was a very particular thing that they were going for,
it is like a
and
it's like a comedic act to
yeah,
the point that it's silly. It's so silly and over the top that there's no other way that you can read this as other than my God, like if you were just going to write an offensive Jewish stereotype, this is how you would
as soon as they
depict
showed up on screen, the
these
first thing
people.
that came to my mind was I was like, oh, I guess these guys are supposed to be Jewish. Like
Right?
it was like very clear.
Like, like this is a really bad Jewish joke. I guess okay,
Yeah,
we
like, oh,
we get it, I guess.
they're just rolling with it. They're gonna keep this going.
And so
Okay.
like again to just like his point, I completely agree. You can have racial and ethnic stereotypes, and I should say you can have racial and ethnic peoples that you are depicting and have them not be stereotypes and still have them be villainous and have them be problematic in certain ways, and you can do that and have them be very questionable and not have it be this like ridiculous caricature. Just take I mean every time they're on screen it takes me out of the movie. It's such a
And
I don't know, it's so off-putting.
and that's the thing. And you can even have it to where they're almost like sort of caricature like just to make your point, because then you can reveal more about how, okay, there's an actual character behind there. There's something to be said for possibly doing it that way. I don't know if that's how I would approach it, but there's at least, I could see if that's what you're going for. But they show there's no character development here there for these guys. There's no nothing. It's just they're the two club owners, and they're essentially just the foil where they basically just say, nope, we have a contract and you have to abide by it. And that's it. That's pretty much what they do in the 3 or 4 scenes they have in the movie. And so, yeah, don't need to harp on it too much, but I agree. It felt weird. And I wrote that down immediately as soon as I saw it. I was like, what is going on here with this? Um, but kind of back to what you were saying, Steve, a lot of the stuff, like they just have so many of these different angles, and they all could have gone somewhere interesting and somewhere unique, and none of them did. Like you mentioned with I can't remember his character's name, but Giancarlo Esposito, and how, at one point his girlfriend comes backstage, his girlfriend is a white woman, and they're like, hey, you know the rules, no girlfriends in the dressing room. And he's like, the only reason you guys are saying this is because she's white. If she was a black girl, you guys wouldn't care. And it's like, okay, there's an interesting idea there. Is there something to that? Are they going to explore this? These different dynamics between relationships, because you've got Denzel and the women he's involved with, and then you can kind of juxtapose it with some of the other ones in the band, and they just nope. they didn't do anything with it further. That was just it. That was one little scene. They said it, and then they didn't delve into it any further. And then, um, it's actually kind of weird that I mean, I didn't really feel like there was any like there was a little bit of sort of talking about racial issues and sorts of things. Like there was a scene where they're at a party and Denzel is explaining how black people invented jazz and everything like that and but it was actually kind of weird that there was almost more exploration of that in New York, New York than there was in Betta Blues. So, but and that just goes to I think like they did kind of approach it. They kind of approached that topic and then they went away from it. Like you said, Nate, um, Spike Lee as an actor, he's fine in small little roles, but when Spike Lee is going toe to toe with Denzel Washington here, it's just like, I'm sorry, dude, but you've got to understand your own limitations.
Yeah, at a bit
And
of a disadvantage.
yeah, and you're not he just didn't cut it. And, we love Spike Lee as a director, but you don't have to self-insert on all the time. And so that was a struggle because a lot of the Wesley Snipes and Denzel Washington scenes were great because both of them are really good actors. But then the other sort of big emotional scenes were between you had your Denzel and Wesley Snipes. You had Denzel and the women in his life. One was Spike Lee's sister, and um, the other woman, and then had him and Spike Lee, and those were kind of the character interactions that provided the most meat for the movie. And it's just every time there was a heavy one between Spike Lee and Denzel, it just fell flat because Spike Lee couldn't keep up. And yeah, there's this the weird gambling angle. I mean, I suppose initially my thought was like, well, they could have just completely eliminated this and then just made it that Giant Spike Lee's character Giant was just shitty at his job and that's why they fired him because it seemed like the whole point was to get that to a place where they could fire him. But I guess the whole point is to get to where at the end Giant is being assaulted by
Yeah.
the bookies enforcers so that they can eventually, Denzel can Bleak can try and come to his rescue, and then he gets beat up as well, and that's sort of a climax
But
for the movie. But
that's introducing a whole nother theme, which and you could base an entire movie around right there. What happens to a man or a person? His entire life is music, right? His whole basis, his whole being is music. We've seen him literally ignore the women in his life uh, while they're talking to him. He's ignoring everything around him to focus on his music. That's all he knows. That's all he wants to do. That's all he is. And now, because of this beating that happens as a direct result of the gambling, he can't do music anymore. That right there is a hell of a theme. That's a movie. That's a theme you can build a movie around. And he introduces this with 20 fucking minutes to go in the goddamn movie on top of all the other ones we had. So it's like, oh man, it's just another missed opportunity. And it's just a shame.
And I think these two movies may be just in terms of not even as much thematically, but just in terms of like structure and the way they're made are maybe the two most similar we've had this season and maybe will have all season. So, but I feel like they both had similar issues as well. And, you know, not only too much, I don't know if either movie could really decide what it wanted to be, but also just like these overextended music scenes. And like it's a movie about music, so you've got to have music scenes. But I mean, I think when it comes to sort of music movie or a musical biopic or whatever, I think Ray is probably the best that I've seen. I haven't seen everything, but and what I think Ray does very well is it doesn't let the musical scenes overstay their welcome, and each one has a certain purpose to it that gives a little bit of characterization that pushes the story a little bit further. These movies don't have that. It's just like, hey, let's show these long music scenes because they play music and that's what they do. And and then you get to the end, and I feel like both of them have these like pseudo happy endings that are unearned. It felt like they weren't entirely happy because in Mo Betta Blues, he can no longer play, but he's got a wife and kid. And then in New York, New York, he doesn't get the woman and the kid, but he can play and he's successful now, which is what he always wanted. We can talk more about that in a minute here, but it just, I don't know. Both the endings felt overly long, like way overly long, like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, way sort of, because, you know, like the sort of climax of the movie where Denzel gets, Bleak tries to rescue Giant, he gets beat up, finds out he can't play anymore. That whole sequence afterwards, after when he's recovering in the hospital and finds out he can't play, and then he goes and gets married. I mean, it's like a 20-25 minutes of sort of denouement on there, and it's just like this is unnecessary. And then the whole, oh my God, New York, New York. Well, I'll save it for that one. But um, yeah, I just because I wrote down as well that the gambling plot line just felt out of place, and just I wrote down multiple times like more contemplative music scenes. So I felt like just yeah, both movies were kind of just all over the place, and I don't know that they knew what they wanted to be, and that kind of goes back to what you were saying, Steve, of just too many plot threads, too many ideas, all of which are good and could have been in a good movie, but would have been better with more focus. And I think there's something to what you're saying where his success kind of got to the point because Stephen King is my favorite author to read, and he had so much success so quickly. I think by the time he got to start writing books like The Stand, no one told him no. And so all of a sudden he's writing these 1,200-page tomes, and it's like, oh my God. And there's, 600 pages that probably could have been cut out if you really wanted to. And I think both these movies being earlier in their careers, I think the directors kind of had some success and had a little bit more freedom and maybe took it a little bit too far and that they just sort of meandered with no real purpose. So yeah, I mean that's an equal complaint I have about both, but definitely with Mo Better Blues.
I make a grand point about New York, New York as we kind of move into New York, New York. I find it very interesting that maybe there was something generationally that we don't get. But and I didn't really appreciate this at the time. Why did all of these very famous filmmakers at that time think I need to make like a big zany musical? Because Scorsese does it here. Francis Ford Coppola infamously did it with One from the Heart, which was a huge box office bomb. Last season we watched, it wasn't truly like a movie musical. 1941 kind of has that like we're just out of control and wild, and it kind of has that feeling to it. There's
This is what
certainly
And
sequences.
I don't want to interrupt, but all right, I will. But it's funny just because I literally wrote down, is this Scorsese's 1941? I literally wrote
It
that
is,
down. So
and
that's funny
I
that you
literally
mentioned it.
think it is in the context of all. Maybe was there something about like I like the old MGM musicals. Like I get it. I
well, yeah,
like
they
Singing in
they
the
grew
Rain.
up on them, kind of. I mean,
They grew up on them, and they all grew up and were like, I gotta make one of those before it's all over. I'm gonna follow up whatever Taxi Driver with New York, New York. So I've said off air several times. My co-hosts have heard me say many, many times. I do hate this movie. I hate New York, New York. It is a wildly unlikable movie with wildly unlikable characters, and it is just silly. And there's not one moment of it that tonally works. And again, I think that I just sort of ponder what Scorsese was trying to do, and I just assumed that it was just he kind of wanted to make his big musical. I will say, and this is an opinion that has evolved, I think this is probably his worst movie. I haven't seen every single one of his movies. I think this is probably his worst movie. But previously, I was so critical of Casino because I said Casino was I think I actually used the phrase, this isn't his worst movie, but it may be his laziest, and that's worse. And I still agree with that. There's maybe something I appreciate a little bit more about. I probably dislike Casino more just because I appreciate that New York is like, hey, he tried something. He took the biggest swing at this pitch and he missed. He hit nothing but air, but at least he took a swing. So there's that. The Liza Minnelli performance of New York is kind of, it is sort of iconic. It's the only semi-iconic thing that we have this week. Um, the song itself probably became more iconic than her performance in this
And
movie of it.
to be clear, the song it's from the movie, right? Like her
Yes.
singing is the first
So
time it was performed, right?
So yeah,
Okay.
everybody thinks that it's a Frank Sinatra thing.
But yeah, he's
I was
covering
wondering
the
that
verse,
myself.
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because we associate Frank Sinatra with like Frank Sinatra, 1950s and 60s, Las Vegas. That's what we're thinking of. He recorded this as kind of an old guy. He recorded it 3 years after this movie came out. His is a cover that he recorded in 1980. And I think particularly our generation who was born after all this, we just hear that and we think like, oh, that's classic Blue Eyes.
Classic
Like
old blue eye.
that's 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 Frank Sinatra, man. That's that's the guy. That's Sinatra, Don Rickles, palling around Las Vegas, singing a song about New York for some reason, and it's not that. It's literally this thing that he did kind of later in his life. So yeah, the song was written for this movie, and I think everyone agrees Liza Minnelli kills it. It definitely cannot save. God, again, just the I don't know what, and I'm glad he's gotten off this a little bit. I guess to a certain degree. Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese would really do this thing where it was just like I feel like there were so many movies, and some of them it works. Like I think it works in Raging Bull. Steve would disagree with this. There's just something about how he directs them and how these scenes are written and the screenplays they developed and what they worked on together and the stories they worked on together where it's just like, okay, De Niro, you're going to be completely impulsive in every single interaction that you have with people, in everything. And I just feel like there's so many of his movies. We got, this Mean Streets, which I previously brought up, was like it's almost to a comical sense. Raging Bull, it probably works, a little bit. Cape Fear, I think there's a little bit of that, particularly toward the end. I just like he kind of always seemed to direct him in the same way for a period of his career. Where it's just like you're just fucking crazy, man. Like that's who you are. You are gonna fly off the goddamn handle whenever, like at any moment. And he's so unlikable. The character is so unlikable in this movie. And I just, man, I did not like this movie when I watched it when I was 20 in that class, and I still just don't like it. I respect Scorsese taking a swing probably a little bit more than I would have when I'm looking at kind of the whole scope of his career, but it just doesn't do it for me. Steve, what did you think of New York, New York?
Oh man. Okay. So I said the other day that Cape Fear was I think I said Cape Fear was his worst movie. Did I say that? I think I said that.
I think you did say that it was his worst movie.
Yeah, well, that was wrong. But
In fact, I
this
think when we were done recording, I said, "Well, just wait a week.
yeah.
'Cause
So
it's going downhill."
This is the reverse now of thinking that the opening credits are best each week. Now
exactly, yeah.
each new movie now is the worst.
In fact, going back to your reference to what I said about, hate being the opposite of love, not indifference. I can't stop thinking about Cape Fear. So like all these weeks later. So I may wind up liking that movie because I hated it so much. Like it somehow stuck in my brain. There are things I still can't stand about that. But anyway, I won't talk about Cape Fear anymore. This one is absolute trash because of the De Niro character. Not Robert De Niro, not his, he's obviously a fantastic actor. We've seen him be fantastic, but I guess it's the way, like Nate, what you were saying, the way that Scorsese's directing him in this, or the way that it's written, or maybe it's just the time. Maybe it's just literally the time period. You know, he is a raging narcissist. He's a toxic person. He is emotionally abusive. He is manipulative. He literally threatens to kill himself to keep her around. I think multiple times, at least once. It is just a classic relationship that is it's literally based on just like emotional abuse. And it's she literally tells him no, go away at the beginning, and he persists, and we treat this as it's a romantic thing, which, by the way, we got to talk about Betta Blues, because that happens at the end of that movie too. So neither of these movies is covering itself in glory when it comes to gender relations. But oh man, my wife watched the beginning of this movie too, and she said, "Oh, that's a little problematic at the beginning when." I think I said that part actually because my wife was making faces. In the recurring bit where De Niro's continually trying to hit on Liza Minnelli's character, and she's saying no over and over and over again. She's literally saying no, leave, 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 leave. And I say, well, you know, this movie is from a different time, and she's like, well, yeah. Uh, she said it goes all the way back to the time when cavemen were clubbing us over the head and carrying us away to their caves. I was like, well, yeah, kind of. And it sticks with that energy throughout the entire movie, literally all the way through. And because of that, I just, like you said, he's so unlikable, and I just can't. I see her as a hostage the entire time. She's an emotional hostage the entire movie, and I asked you this, Nate. We got together a couple nights ago, and I didn't want to bring up anything, you know, specific about the podcast, but I just said I wanted you to think about this for the couple days between then and now. Was the portrayal of their relationship in 1977 when this was made? And Jeff, I posit this to you now. Was that supposed to be somewhat endearing back then? Is this just something that hasn't aged well? Or was he supposed to be an emotionally abusive, narcissistic piece of shit in 1977 also? And she's overcoming that. And she's just rolling with the punches because that's just life. I don't know.
The only thing I will say to that is to give credence for some sort of attempt for Martin Scorsese to at least address that. I think there is supposed to be at least some element of her overcoming that relationship, because as soon as she finally calls it quits, then her career explodes, right? She goes back to New York to have this baby. Her agent's like, "Hey, I can hook you up with these people to help you out, make some extra money." And then next thing you know, she's got this big record deal. She's on all these magazines and all this sorts of things. So I think that that was part of the element. I was actually going to bring that up, that I think he sort of tried to get that, but it didn't work.
Right.
And
It's because it's the tone of the movie, right?
yeah, nothing in this
Yeah.
movie works. And there is the whole thing is it's all over the place. It is all the whole beginning sequence, besides, you know, take away the misogyny, right? Which I know you can't, but just to say, okay, there's nothing that they're sort of trying to play a little bit up for comedy, the way he like keeps going to these different women doesn't work. And then there's like later that night when he's stalking her. He is stalking her
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
100%.
He literally
And
stalks her.
he goes back to the hotel, and then he does this whole like routine in front of the guy at the desk, and I was like, is this sort of some weird comedy routine? Because it's not funny at all, but it's clearly trying to be. And actually, I wrote down at one point, you know, that like Liza Minnelli has really good comic timing, but Robert De Niro does not. So like that whole sequence at the hotel, he's doing all this stuff, and it's just like it is awkward as hell. And then they have this really awkward makeout scene, and then De Niro leaves, and then Liza Minnelli kind of like straightens her dress and turns to him and says, that's a sharp looking suit. And it's like that was the only moment that actually made me laugh in the whole movie, and it was pretty funny. But I mean, I literally like I wrote down the sequence that I wrote them down, and I was just like, there's so many awkward makeout scenes. And then my next comment was, this is so wildly misogynistic. And then my next comment was, is this not an abusive relationship? And then I followed that up with Jimmy Doyle is just a dick. And then it was like this whole relationship is toxic. And it just that was the sequence of the movie.
Yeah.
And like I think there was an like I said, I think there was an element to try and address it, but I also think that there was more of it that was sort of meant to be okay at the time. Cause like this whole idea that she kind of thought that maybe that she thought that his persistence at the beginning was endearing in some way, and that this is, obviously the relationship eventually becomes too toxic to continue, and then at the end, you know, she sort of falls back into the trap, and he's like, "Hey, I want to, let's go talk somewhere." And then she's about to leave and go talk to him, and then she's like, "No, everything you put me through, all that shit. No, no, no. I'm not going to do this." And so, good. She has some agency for herself there. And because the whole time I was like, do not leave and go meet this guy, because even at the end, after all this stuff that had happened between them, he was still the same kind. He was still being a dick in the dressing room. He's like, with all these people, like, I got to get out of here. And then he's like, I couldn't talk with all those people in there, but I need to talk to you. And it's like, no, he's just being abusive. He's making you come to him on his terms. Like, these are all
He doesn't
just
change. There's not one moment of evolution for this
no.
person. He is a total unrepentant asshole the entire movie.
And that's
And
that's why I felt, even though he didn't end up back with her again to make it, quote unquote happy ending, like he still had his moment. He's like this big band guy now, and he was in newspapers and all this stuff, and he was successful. And I felt like that was unearned. Like there was just no way, um uh, like yeah, there was no evolution at all for his character. And it's just he's maybe one of the most unlikable characters or protagonist, um that I've ever seen in film. And it was like, maybe he was supposed to be unlikable to a certain degree, but it wasn't an interesting unlikable. It wasn't like I wonder why he's this way. It was just like, I don't even care. He's too big of a dick. Go away, Jimmy. So yeah, and I because at one point I was like, this the when they were having their whole back and forth sequence at the beginning, I was like, this isn't a meet cute thing. This is a meet
Right.
ugly. Like it just
Oh God, it's
it was
awful.
so just uncomfortable. And yeah, I don't think it was meant at the time to be as uncomfortable as it is today. So I do think there is some poor aging there.
Yeah,
Um,
and it was apparently a nightmare filming. I read some of their books about it, and I guess it was just kind of a disaster. And they had to build, the set building. Just a lot of that didn't work out right, and there was a lot of improvisation that didn't work. And it's even said I was extremely disappointed when the movie was finished because I had a really bad experience making it.
who said that? Scorsese or
Yeah,
oh,
Scorsese said that.
did he
So,
happen to mention, Steve? I know that, and I'm not using this as an excuse. I know this was kind of around the period of his life where he was addicted to drugs. He had a pretty significant drug problem. Does he? I'm genuinely asking, like, in your research, does he maybe make a connection to this period of his life and this film and just how he just kind of swung and missed and it's just not very good?
So he didn't explicitly say it in this book. However, there's bits and pieces here where so he mentioned let's see here. I think he's referencing either one of his producers or somebody, someone in his orbit when he's talking about this film. He says it's about two people in love with each other who are both creative. That was the idea, to see if the marriage would work. We didn't know if this marriage was going to work because we didn't know if our own marriages were working. So there's a clue that obviously things aren't going well for him. And then later on, he's talking about, he said, we were all out of our minds at that time and had trouble sorting out our plans. But so and so thought it was a great idea. So I said, all right. So, I mean, yeah, there's indications that shit was not all, hunky dory in Scorsese world at this point. And, that's reflected in and the way it came out. I think ultimately, this was his attempt to make what you were, talking about, the Music Man, or a Sound or not Sound of Music. What'd you say? Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the
Something
Rain, yeah.
Yeah, but he cast Travis Bickle, and like
Horribly miscast.
right,
The whole,
and
I mean,
you got
Liza
that
Minnelli, you could argue,
energy
was good.
coming to it. Yeah, she was great in this. She was perfectly
She was the
cast.
only saving grace of the movie, and that was only slightly.
Right, and she has
So.
some good lines. I mean, I know,
And
I don't.
there's zero chemistry between Robert De
Yeah.
Niro, and even when things were supposed to be good between the two of them, just no chemistry at all. Just it was no.
No, it's a. I wrote in my notes at one point. I was like, "This is a horror story." And another
Yeah,
point I
there
wrote,
was
this could be Taxi Driver, the prequel. Like, we don't know Travis Bickle's backstory. Like, theoretically, he could have been the child of a World War II veteran. Like, you never know. Maybe this is how it all happened.
well, I would say he and Sybil Shepherd watching a porno in a movie theater had better chemistry than he and Liza Minnelli did.
Weird
Yeah,
how there's genuine scenes, not necessarily in that movie, but like After Hours, there's some pretty captivating scenes. Like when he first comes over to the apartment and they're talking, like, and it's crazy how he can do that in a movie that's so weird and so off the wall. And yet this movie that is supposed to be like, this is supposed to be the straightforward
yeah,
like musical romance. Like this is the one that should have been easy.
right.
It's
It's
just
just
so
a misfire on
Well, I
Robert,
mean,
everything.
what I want you
at this time, Robert De Niro had won an Oscar, Liza Minnelli had won an Oscar. Like this was, I mean, this could have been huge if they would have done it right, and they just fumbled the ball. Not even at the goal line; they fumbled it in their own goal line, out the back of the end zone. Not even out the back, because that's just a safety. They let somebody else. They fell on it, and it squirted out from underneath, and then another team member from the other team got it and scored a touchdown. That's how bad this was.
oh, I
So,
just yeah. I'm curious
so
as to what you
neither,
guys are gonna pick.
yeah, neither
Because
movie.
Well, I think there's a very clear winner, guys. I mean, there's no redeeming quality in my mind to New York, New York. I mean, a lot of talented people worked really hard on it. I hate talking so much shit about this. These people that made this movie have way more talent than I do. But, we're sitting here, this is our job. We got to cut through the fat here and make these hard choices. Betta Blues, at the very least, the cast, I think for the most part, is all firing on all cylinders. Denzel Washington, especially, and Wesley Snipes, they're killing it. Denzel Washington, this is like his first leading role, really. In Glory, which was, I think, really the only big movie he had before this, he's kind of a co-leading man. This was kind of his breakout thing.
I mean, he won the Oscar for Glory, so this was.
That's true, but I mean, this is like,
But to your point though, that is what sort of propelled
yeah,
him
that's
to
what
start
gave him
getting
this.
leading roles.
Um,
Because then 2 years later he does Malcolm X.
right. Yeah, he
With
wouldn't
Spike
have
Lee.
Malcolm X without this. That's, I mean, the book,
well,
the
then he does
Spike Lee
like
books
in the
pretty much
next
says
three,
that.
as he does Malcolm X, he does Philadelphia, he does Pelican
Interesting.
Brief, and that's like when he starts to like really blow up as kind of as sort of a
Not
leading
White
man.
Squall, Pelican Brief.
Yeah.
That's a
It's a
callback.
callback to season 1. If
That's a
anybody's
callback.
listening out there, it's a
Oh,
callback.
I know. Mom, if you're listening, there's a callback for
There
you
you
for
go.
devoted
Yes, yes.
listeners.
All our moms here. Um,
Hi, Mom. I love you. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's
yes,
Day.
happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, including my wife. So yeah, Steve, you were getting to your point though. Clear winning. I think you're going with
Oh
Mo
yeah,
Betta
Betta Blues. That's a solid film. That's a watchable film. It's bloated. It does kind of creak under its own weight. But I gave it on my little ranking out of 5 stars. I gave that a 2.5, 3, depending on how I'm feeling. Yeah. To me, that's a solid movie. The cast alone carries that movie. The cast and the cinematography and the score. I don't want to overlook the score. This was the last time, I put this in our notes, that no one ever looks at, by the way. Here's a little sausage making. Nobody looks at the outline besides me. So a little grievance airing. But anyway, this was the last time Spike Lee and his dad collaborated. His dad famously is a composer, and feeling like a terribly prepared podcast host right now and forgetting his dad's name.
Bill.
Thank you. And
No one ever checks the notes but me.
says the asshole who didn't double check. But I can't remember if his dad passed away or if they just didn't, they just didn't work together again after this. But for whatever reason, they didn't work together after this, and it really came together well. Joey Lee, actually, his sister, who plays in Indigo, she said in an interview years later, this is her favorite of all their scores together, and I think it is. I think it's one of the best ones that they've done of the ones we've listened, we've seen. So I think there's lots of stuff to like about Mo Betta Blues. It's lots of missed opportunities, and that's a shame. It could have been one of Spike Lee's better movies, I think, if he had just used a scalpel in some areas and maybe consulted the Anti-Defamation League in a few times when writing the script.
How awkward do you think it was or would be to direct your sister in a sex scene? That's what I want to know.
So that obviously
definitely
crossed my
happened.
mind. So they did a closed set, and he was not even there when they did it. The cinematographer, oh my gosh, the guy who's been with him in all these movies was the same guy that was there. Ernest Dickerson, I believe.
Ernest Dickerson.
Yeah, he basically was the director for that scene. And she even said, she's like, it was awkward. I hated it. We talked about misogyny. Maybe this is kind of a segue bringing it back. This movie, again, does not escape criticism on that front either. Apparently, there was some criticism from the actress that played Clark, that some of the guys in the cast were a little kind of chauvinistic behind the scenes. There were no accusations of, improper, no abuse or anything like that, but just that it was very much a boys' club because some of them were like method actors, and there was very much obviously a jazz club in the 19 whatever this is 60s was very much a boys' club, and then a lot of the guys kind of palled around, and it was very much.
It was modern day.
I guess it was, wasn't it? Yeah, because he was a kid in '69, wasn't he? At the very beginning of the movie, he's a young boy in '69. So, well, anyway, I guess. So I guess just jazz artists are famously chauvinistic. Anyway, that was the explanation given in the interview for why they were chauvinistic.
Ago, almost 35 years ago now. So it was definitely. We've come a long way in
35
years.
Yeah. Well, that was Spike Lee's explanation. That was maybe why they were that way, because they were method actors and they were like that off the set. But again, I want to be clear: there were no allegations of inappropriate behavior or anything like that. It's just maybe it wasn't quite as welcoming as it could have been. But Denzel wouldn't take off his shirt for the sex scenes. Spike Lee couldn't even get him to do it, and of course Joy had to, and the actress who played Clark, I'm forgetting her name, she had to. So it's just goes to show you that double standard.
It's weird. I would expect Denzel, of all people, especially young Denzel.
I guess he wanted to.
Huge mistake. If I were young Denzel, I would have absolutely taken off my shirt for that scene.
I mean, if I'm young Denzel, I'm
show the goods,
Mark
baby.
Wahlberg, where you gotta make me put a shirt on before.
I guess he just wanted to be taken seriously as an actor.
Winning an Oscar wasn't enough. He wanted to. You got to keep that shirt on during sex scenes.
I guess, but yeah.
But
it's actually funny.
I will
go ahead.
I will relieve the stress for you. I think I'm going to go with Mo Betta Blues as well, just because, like, I think neither of these movies were interesting or good. But I guess Mo Betta Blues was less bad. I thought I wasn't as.
What would you say? It was Mo Betta? Come on, it was right there.
It was no Betta. Maybe.
Did you guys know what Mo Betta meant before this? Is this just us being like way too like suburban and white?
I mean, I assumed it was Mo is just like more, right? Like Mo money.
It very clearly, like in the movie, it references sex, right?
Yeah. I only knew it because I'd seen the movie when I was younger. So I only knew the reference because of having already watched the
I guess
movie.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
I mean, they sing a song called the Betta Blues, and it's about sex. Did you miss that part? You really were bored by this
So,
movie, weren't you? You were
guess
just
so.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, truly, I was not engaged with it at
I
all.
guess
Either of these movies. So, yeah, not
neither
shocked
the
that I
sex nor
didn't
the
pick that one.
violence like got you to pay attention. Okay,
Yeah, and
anyways,
again, unearned. I thought because even though like Denzel lost his ability to play because he got beat up trying to help his friend, he like we alluded to earlier, he essentially forces himself onto Indigo, and then now they're getting married and they have a kid and everything's happy, and he's like this great dad that was a better dad or better than his mom was to him when he was a kid. And it's like, oh, it's full circle, but now he's better, and it's like, no, it felt stupid to me. I didn't like the ending at all of either movie. So, but yeah, we're forced to pick one. So I think I got to go with Betta Blues because there was a little bit more some stuff like between Denzel and Wesley Snipes and everything that I liked better. But I think either of these movies was a shining example of these directors.
I think initially when we were sketching this out on that Winstead's lunch this past summer or whenever we were doing it, we kind of talked about this as the week that we didn't necessarily call last season. We had like a this is their worst film week. We didn't call this week that, but we kind of said, I think this is probably going to be their worst films week just because neither of these is a very good movie. I wanted to go into this. The reason I wanted both of your opinions, and you made it a little bit easier on me. I There was a part of me that wanted to reward Scorsese for just doing something different. And if I didn't like either movie, I might as well. And again, Steve, to your point, like I hate this movie. I hate New York, New York. And
Well,
maybe
if I may stop to ask a question, like don't you then have to give the same credit to Spike Lee? Because like even though he'd had fewer films in his catalog at that point, it was still different than what he had previously done, right?
yeah,
well, I
yeah,
think Nate might disagree with that premise because you indicated earlier, Nate, that you felt like this was
it's not
It has enough similarities
come
to
on.
his work as Scorsese's to his, because like we all talked about how similar Robert De Niro is to the other characters that he's played
yeah.
in Scorsese movies. So
That's
I think
true.
there's an element of laziness to both the directors, I think, because and I actually meant to bring up this point of just not even necessarily specific to these two movies, but just are these two directors too reliant on certain actors? Like granted, this was the first Spike Lee Denzel um, uh,
Yeah.
movie they made together, but they made three
Collab.
or four together since. And Scorsese and Robert De Niro, this was like their third movie already, and they've made 8 in his total. I mean,
That's a
eh,
topic I
that-
think we need to talk about it in our conclusion for sure. If not right now, I mean, I'm willing to dive into it right now, but I think that's something we should rule on for sure at the end
yeah,
because
that's a good
Yeah,
point. We can definitely because even like Harvey Keitel, right? Shoot,
yeah,
Harvey Keitel
yeah.
has been in. He's not even. That's not even exclusive to Scorsese. Harvey Keitel, he's been in like 6 movies this season. But
but
anyway,
Yeah.
I
sorry,
mean, these
that's off.
guys,
That's
because you're right, these
let's
guys they
let's
go
put
back
a
to the
pin in that
well
because
over and
I
over,
do think it's a good topic to talk to, not in this episode, but
and then
I yeah,
Leo's
yeah.
coming up.
yeah, and Leo, like what makes we won't get too much into it, but yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously later in his career, there's maybe some parts there that are a little bit miscast. But yeah, there was a part of me that I'm probably being inconsistent, which is funny because I'm actually trying to be consistent in what I'm saying across the season. There was a part of me that wanted to reward Scorsese for like, hey, you did something different. Took a swing, and I admire that more than I admire something like Casino, where you just basically had all these actors that playing the exact same characters from a previous movie. But I just can't do it. I so hate New York, New York, and everything about it that I have to pick like I would feel bad. I can't just pick a movie for the principle of the thing. Like I just It's so bad,
I
and
think
there's just
sorry to interrupt you, but I think you can do this and still be consistent because while he took a swing with the type of movie, he was still lazy because he just cast De Niro
yeah.
as Mean Streets De
Maybe that's just
Niro as the
yeah.
same.
Because yeah, a Scorsese Liza Minnelli pairing, it's like, okay, that's interesting, right? Like I would not have ever, you would not ever think. Maybe at that time he was younger in his career, so maybe it would be a little bit different. But yeah, but then it's just, oh, now we're getting De Niro again, and let's get the band back together.
After Hours was
I,
a swing. You should have rewarded him for that.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I probably have thought more about After Hours than a lot of movies this particular season. I guess again it's going to be Mo Betta Blues. I think my final thing will be the performance of the song Harlem Blues is the thing nearly 20 years later that I remember from watching either of these movies in back-to-back weeks when I was 20 years old. That's the one sequence I remember. Either of these movies are on TV. Uh, New York, New York, I will call in to the programming director and tell them, why are you doing this? Why are you putting people through this? Whereas Mo Better Blues,
You're gonna get a
if it's
sternly worded
close to,
letter.
yeah, if it's Mo Better Blues that I were to happen to come across this on television, I'd be like, hey, is this toward the end? I kind of want to watch that scene where she sings Harlem Blue. Like that's the thing that I take from this. There's that kind of that one moment. And you know what? Sometimes, we all have that. We all have kind of those silly little moments in movies that we don't even necessarily like the movie, but we kind of just like those moments. And I, you know, I really, really like that moment. And so I'm going to call it Mo Better Blues, but this is a depressing episode. And and by the way, I say that coming off a week where we just watched Bamboozled and The Last Temptation of Christ. So so this was actually more depressing, I think, to
Oh
go through
man.
these two
I,
movies and talk about them.
I
Oh
So
don't think
I
Lord.
don't
this.
know.
I still think Cape Fear and Red Hook Summer was the worst week, and that will be the worst week of the season.
Ah, I
Um,
can't stop thinking about them. All right.
but I say that. So now we've got here. This is we've got Spike Lee
That's a
taking the lead
two
here.
week lead, right?
No, just the one.
Oh,
So
what? So
Actually, they
five
were
to
tied.
four.
wait, hang on. What is it?
Yeah, because this is week 9. So Spike Lee won. That She's Got to Have It, Do the Right Thing, Clockers, Bamboozled, and Mo Better Blues. Scorsese, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, After Hours, Cape Fear. Um, so yeah, and then we've got 4 weeks left from here on out. So we're pretty tight. And let me tell you, folks, we've got the next 3 weeks. The last
Oh
the
baby,
last 3
baby.
weeks have been some of the lesser known ones, but the next 3 weeks are basically, they're all bangers, as the kids would say,
No
right?
kids say
Just
that.
all classic movies, and it'll start next week with our staged week, which is will be Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island going up against Spike Lee's Inside Man. Two really good movies where the sort of premise is that things aren't what they seem. Things aren't what they seem. They're staged a little bit. So um, those, and yeah, we'll, as we talk about overuse of actors, Leonardo DiCaprio in Shutter Island, who's been in he will actually be in the next 3 movies that we talk about with Scorsese, and then Inside Man, uh, with Denzel Washington, and then he'll actually be in another movie that we talk about, and
Yeah.
then his
And then
son
it's
will be in another movie. I hadn't even made that connection until this very
yeah.
moment. So, yeah, that's actually, Steve. We definitely need to put a pin in that. We need to definitely talk in our finale about this, and how that sort of impacts these
It's a
directors.
thing. It's a
It
thing.
definitely is a thing, and there's even some good crossover this year too. But anyway, focus on next week. So if you're following along with the movies you want to watch, Shutter Island, Inside Man next week. 2 really good movies. I've
Staged.
seen both, but I am excited to watch them again because um, both these movies are very good. So um, be back with us next week. Watch those movies. Uh, Until then, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week, and thanks for stopping by.